Welcome, listeners, to Financial Autonomy for Women, the podcast. My name is Maureen Paley. I am your host on this podcast. I am a life coach, financial coach, career coach, working with women and those who have received gendered conditioning, typically given towards those designated the female sex at birth. So welcome to this community and welcome to this podcast. In this episode, I get to interview Rose Cabral, a realtor based in Sacramento. And Rose has been an inspiration to me on many levels, and I can't wait to tell you more about her. Rose, for 11 years, has been helping people become homeowners by demystifying real estate. Her clients are single women, creatives, and social justice activists. Rose loves to guide first-time home buyers through the process, from visualizing their home to writing an offer to getting the keys. In the 15 years Rose has lived in Sacramento, she has found a love for meeting her neighbors and community. She serves on the Sacramento Community Land Trust Board, working to prevent displacement and build historically discriminated neighborhood power. She also serves on the Tahoe Park Neighborhood Association and coordinates an annual yard sale and garden tour. Rose believes everyone deserves a safe and stable place to live. Rose Cabral, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to talk with you. What does it feel like having me read that bio statement, just hearing it from your end?
Great. Really great.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I don't know. I haven't been on a lot of podcasts. So or been at things where people read my bio out loud. So that was fun.
Yeah, I think this is a great bio. And one of the words that sticks out to me the most in this bio is this word demystifying. You are someone who is on a mission to demystify real estate. So tell us what that means.
Yes. So when a lot of people think of real estate, it's this like foreign, confusing, lots of paperwork thing. And so I'm trying to change that and make sure that it's not complicated and it's something that people can gain access to, because most people live in a home, not everybody, but most people live in a home or space. And so they interact with real estate every day just by living. And so why not make it more clear and less confusing and less complicated?
I think you raised some really fantastic points, because it's like, if we are people who are sheltered, if we are fortunate enough to be sheltered, because we know we have unsheltered neighbors, right? But when we are sheltered, it's like you've got these four walls and a ceiling that you live in every day. And the whole process of buying the real estate, if you're a renter, your landlord bought it. If you're a homeowner, then you bought it and you went through the process. So I can see what you're saying. Like, when we are sheltered, we are still removed, especially if we haven't gone through the home buying process, we're still removed from the steps it takes to get there. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. Especially if you're renting. Maybe you don't know even how much the house or apartment you're living in cost. And so, yeah, it's just being removed from it and not really thinking about it. I mean, even as like an investment, right? For the landlord or the property owner, right? This is their investment if you're renting. And so it's like you're living in somebody else's investment.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. That's somebody else's investment that you are funding, essentially. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, if they have a mortgage, you're essentially paying their mortgage. If they don't have a mortgage because they already paid off the place, you're just giving them cash flow every month. Yeah.
So that's why everybody wants to be a landlord, right?
Yes.
So it sounds like real estate provides an opportunity. Real estate is one of the main ways that we build wealth in this country. And it sounds like what you're creating through your style of working with people and through the community service that you're doing and building communities you're looking to make sure that folks who have been farther removed from other folks, potentially by design, right? And yes, by design,
Definitely by design.
intentionally, you want to bring them closer to the process and help them understand the process so that it isn't so overwhelming.
Exactly. Because also, usually a home purchase will be the biggest thing that you ever buy. You know, like we buy clothes, we buy cars, but a home is like the biggest thing in terms of cost that you will ever buy. You will ever buy. And so if you're going to spend that much money on something, it would be great to understand the process and understand how you're buying it and who you're buying it from, and also, you know, have somebody you trust that's taking you along this journey, hopefully, because it's the biggest thing you're ever going to pay for.
Great point. And there's not a lot of people as well that can just go out and buy a house in cash, right? I mean, there's not a lot of people that can just go out and buy a car in cash either.
Yes.
Speaking of big things that we buy, we typically need to finance, which brings in, you know, a financial institution to support the transaction, and that can bring in greater complexity that then again needs demystifying.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's great. So on this podcast, we talk about, this is the Financial Autonomy for Women, the podcast, right? So as you know, I'm a financial coach, and what I love is supporting women in all the ways that they engage with money. So the 7 ways that women engage with money are earning, spending, saving, investing, borrowing, giving, and manifesting. Of those 7 ways, what do you help with your clients with? Like what's the line you could draw between the work you do as a realtor and what you're helping your clients with?
Probably all of them. I mean, borrowing, you're going to borrow money to buy a house, usually, if you don't have cash. Manifesting, I believe if you have a house, you can manifest all of these other things in your life. And even you can manifest a house. Saving, when you have a house, you're going to save money because you're not going to be giving your property owner, landlord money. Let's see, what were the other ones? And I'll type.
Let's see. Earning.
I
would imagine when you buy a home, you know, the home buying turned into an investment property. That could be a way that you're earning.
Yeah.
And then spending.
Spending. You're
like
gonna
you
spend
mentioned,
money to buy a house.
Yeah. So you're covering everything.
We touch all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot about, and I think it's probably time that we also spilled the beans, that I have to tell everyone that Rose was my realtor when I bought my house in 2022. And she came referred by a mutual, now friend of ours, but a mutual contact who is also a coach and a thought leader in the self-care space, Tammy Hackbarth. And when she sent me the names, I asked Tammy for a recommendation. We met Rose was in a book group, and Tammy mentioned that there are realtors in the book group, and I had wanted to buy a house as a single woman. And when Tammy sent me a little kind of profile of the 3 people that were in the group, and I saw Rose's activism and what she does to build community, I said, okay, this resonates. This is who I want to work with. So I think it's important we let people know.
That.
So let's talk about the people you work with. You work primarily with single women, artists, and other creatives and social justice activists. Why that group of people?
Well, because I was that person when I bought my house. I was buying a house as a single woman, and also because I think because of my activism, I see that if other people who are doing this activism work have a safe and stable place to live, then they can come home at the end of the day and they can rest, and then they can go back out and do that important work that they're doing in the community, changing the world. Because unfortunately, what we've been seeing is a lot of displacement, and usually who are displaced? The people that have those creative jobs that don't pay a lot of money, or the the people that are working in the trenches of their community, trying to help their neighbors. Those are the people that are displaced. And so I think, like, how great would it be if those people, the ones that are having such a great impact on their community, can be stable in it and stay in it and keep this neighborhood community feel.
Keep the community vital.
Yeah.
You brought up the word displacement. That's the thing, to remove when those folks get displaced from the community is at a loss,
Yes.
And I know that your real estate practices in Sacramento, and for those listeners who might be listening from somewhere else, those same people are being displaced in other urban areas all around the country.
Yes.
Right. So the work that you're doing is, and I'm wondering, are you familiar with any real estate professionals who are doing this in other places? Is this almost sounds like it might be a movement of sorts.
So I also call myself an unconventional real estate agent, because when you think of real estate agent, I feel like people have a certain image in their mind.
I know I do. Yes.
What that is, or what that person looks like, what kind of car they drive. So whatever vision you have in your mind, I'm basically the completely opposite, most likely.
Yeah.
And so I love meeting other real estate agents around the country who have the same mindset. And I actually found a real estate agency who's trying to bring these people together. And the word they use is regenerative real estate.
Oh, that's a great word.
It's such a great word, because the word sustain, like if we want to sustain something, it's very like set. We're just going to keep it this way, set. But regenerative is like expanding, recreating, like more, I feel like it's more life driven in that word. And so, and it's really thinking about the real estate industry in a different way. It not in this like, we own land, let's own land. It's like, let's have communities, and how can we all survive and thrive together in these spaces? And instead of owning spaces, like, how do we cohabitate with one another, which is very different than our capitalist society would like us to think about things. And I think a lot of people are seeing the harm that has been done in thinking of land as this commodity, because we can't build more land. There's only a certain amount of land. You can't build more. The oceans are taking some of it back, right? Because they're rising.
Yeah.
So yes, I love, and that's another reason why I love being on podcasts like this, because I want to connect with those agents, even across the country, who are thinking about this in a different way.
And it sounds like what you're describing, rather than the commodification of land, right? Treating it like a commodity that can be traded and transacted. It's more about stewarding and caretaking.
Yes. Yes.
And we need all people in the neighborhood to steward and caretake those that traditionally have been excluded from the stewarding and caretaking. Especially
those, because, well, when America, right, the indigenous people had a way of interacting with the land that was respectful and regenerative.
Right.
And that totally got transformed when we commodified land. And so how do we get back to that place of respecting the land? And even, in my neighborhood, right, there's empty lots, or there's vacant houses. And what happens to those vacant houses is they like disintegrate, and they kind of just, they get run down. And what would it look like if, instead of letting those houses disintegrate or letting those empty lots just stay empty, like what would it look like if we were energizing those spaces, if we were fixing up that house so somebody could live in it? Because we know that a lot of people need places to live.
Right.
And what if we turn those vacant spaces into places where we could grow food, or have, green spaces for people to be in? So it's just, yeah, really thinking about maybe more even like community focused, people focused, well-being focused way of thinking about real estate.
Right. And it sounds like it would be a paradigm shift.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of paradigm shifts, my experience with you as a single woman looking to buy her first home was a very positive one. And I recently read an article in the Washington Post that identified that single women are buying homes, they are outpacing single men. And when they go through the home buying process, they tend to run up against bias and barriers, right?
Yes.
So for example, it's like you might meet your realtor for the first time, or you might go looking at a house and the realtor might say, "Oh, is your husband here? Is your boyfriend here?" So on and so forth. And working with you, I didn't have to, well, first of all, I didn't experience any of that. And it wasn't even like, it didn't even hit my radar because you never asked. And then reading that article, I'd say about a year later, I was so grateful that I worked with you because I didn't have to manage the, hey, I'm a single person, I'm doing this on my own. Like I didn't have to explain things and lobby for myself in a way that I think women probably have to do, especially single women or even our non-binary community, someone who's outside the paradigm of what home ownership looks like. Yeah. They have to navigate more things and work a little harder to make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And you brought this point to me and I was like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. Because that's kind of just what I do. And I don't I don't do it intentionally, but that's just I don't assume that everybody has a partner. I don't assume, I also don't assume gender. I'm like, or relationship status at all. I work with the LGBT community as well. So I'm like, hey, who's looking at a house? And I had actually recently I had clients and they were best friends and they bought a house together. And so I'm excited about these different ways of buying houses because it is such a barrier and it was created that way intentionally. Women weren't able to get a line of credit just in their name until 1974. So it was hard for them to go out and buy a house by themselves. And so the systems take a long time to catch up sometimes. And so the bank's still kind of oh, what is your other name we're putting on here? And you're like, no, there isn't one. It's me. Thank you.
Yeah. And I remember signing my paperwork, basically the signing, this big stack of everything. And I kept coming across my name, Maureen Paley, a single woman, Maureen Paley, a single woman, Maureen Paley, a single woman. And at one point I looked at you, I was like, what is this? Why is this here?
You're like, I get it. I get that I'm a single woman. Thank you for telling me.
And that is perfectly, I was just fascinated about how that was repeated over and over again. And like you said, the systems have not caught up with the reality of how we live our lives. And, I also love this idea of creative ways to enter into real estate investment, because buying a home is a real estate investment. This is a long-term wealth building investment. It is a key to generational wealth in the United States. So I love that you're supporting people with unconventional ways to also enter into that investment and start building that wealth.
Yeah. Well, and you know how it said a single woman. So a few years back, it would have said an unmarried woman.
Oh, right.
Because, if we're not single, we're just unmarried and that's the patriarchy.
Yeah, this is the old systems.
Another reason why we all need to buy houses so we can smash the patriarchy.
Tell me more about that.
Our systems were set up by a bunch of white guys, and they had their best interest at heart. And so in order to change the systems, we need to, unfortunately, it's still set up in a way that money is important and land ownership is important. And so even with our elected officials, they pay a lot of attention to the people who own land in their district.
Right.
So whenever you listen to city council meetings, people will say, I am blah, blah, blah name. I am a homeowner in district whatever. And you're like, okay. They have say over what happens politically because they have a home. And so in order to change these systems, we need women and other groups who have been and are currently discriminated against in the housing industry and many other industries need to get that ownership, become homeowners, gain wealth and equity so that then we can move the needle towards a different system, a different society. Because it's not going to happen overnight, but these are ways that we can help change the system.
Yeah, you raise up a good point about someone can stand up at a government meeting, a board of supervisors or a city council meeting and say, I'm a homeowner in district, whatever. And that seems to carry more formal, validity or legitimacy than, standing up and saying, I'm a renter. When we're homeowners, there's this idea that we've invested in the community and in the future of the community. I mean, I know a lot of renters who love their communities as well, right?
Yeah, and have been in the community for maybe 10, 20, 30 years as a renter.
Yes.
But
yeah.
it's not heard the same way. When you hear
right.
renter versus homeowner, you don't always think, oh, they've been renting for 30 years. Maybe you think, oh, they haven't been there that long.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so you're helping people step out of those paradigms. Well, what would you say to a woman who says, I don't want to own a home? Maybe that's not for me. Like, let's start there. It's not so much she's saying it's out of reach, but I don't need home ownership and it's not for me.
Sure. I mean, I would ask maybe more questions about why and to try to get some more info, but because maybe they don't want to be a homeowner because they don't want to worry about maintenance. They just want to be able to call someone and have them fix something. Although a lot of landlords / property owners I know aren't so great at even getting things fixed. So I don't know if that's a great thing when you're a renter either. Or maybe they think, let's see, what else? I don't want to be a homeowner. Okay, maybe because they want to travel the world and they don't want to own a home in one spot. They don't want to have like roots somewhere. They want to travel the world. So I would say, okay, I mean, let's think about why you're saying that, but also you could be a homeowner and rent your home out. So it could be an investment. You don't have to live in it. You could rent it out, travel the world. If you're worried about maintenance or taking care of your house, there are lots of services that can help make sure that your house is maintained and so that you don't have to do that. And it will be most likely better than even your property manager would be doing it now.
Yeah.
And then you can support other people in the other women in the economy, right? Like a woman plumber or a woman electrician. Like we can funnel our dollars towards these other people that we want to support. I mean, but ultimately it's like if a woman doesn't want to own a home, that's fine. But
right.
Definitely your individual choice.
Right.
But I would ask these questions about like, okay, well, why is it? And is it that you really don't want to, or does it just seem too scary or too out of reach?
Yeah, you bring up some great points. I mean, in the spirit of financial autonomy, we get to choose what's right for us, right?
Yes.
And you listed, of course, if I want to travel the world and I want to be a nomad, right? Then that's my choice. And that's what I'm going to, you know what I mean? Of course, home ownership isn't going to be on my mind. And I think you also brought up some really great points to dig a little deeper with that person potentially. Because I know in my case, at some point in my life, I may not have said like, I don't want to own a home, but I may have said, oh yeah, like that isn't even like on my radar. Why? Maybe because I had years to go travel. Or one big paradigm. I mean, if you think about the vision of a typical homeowner, what I started thinking about, especially as a single woman, is, well, usually it's partnership comes first and then the home purchase with a partner, right?
Yeah.
And so, you may have said to me, maybe in my early to mid 30s, well, what about buying a home? And I would have been like, oh, well, I'm going to meet somebody. Right. And then, fast forward 10 years and I'm like, well, I don't actually need the somebody to show up to make this happen because I'm responsible for my wealth building. So I can totally understand, there's plenty of good reasons not to buy a home. Not every person needs to do that. And we support choice, right?
Yeah.
And self-direction. And then I know that in my experience, like there were times in my life where I probably would have said I'm not interested because I didn't think it was possible. I didn't think it was time. Or maybe I wanted to do other things before I got to that place. Because I do think there is like a model vision of the homeowner, like what the things that have to happen in your life to fall into place before you buy the house.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we see it on TV shows all the time, right? There's an episode where they're like, okay, we're going to go and do the marriage thing. And then we're going to buy the house. And then we're going to have the kids, whatever, right? It's a whole thing.
Yeah, that's how the story goes.
And you're like, so how about we just flip that upside down and get that? That's what I did. I was like, hi, I graduated from college and then I had a job. And then I was like, okay, it's time to buy a house. Like that also was my only goal in life. So
wow. So you finished college. Usually it's like finish college, go get a job, spend some years renting apartments, living with roommates, renting apartments, kind of figuring things out, partnership, home, children, so on and so forth. And you, as a younger person, you had that objective sooner and you went for it sooner.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it was because of how I grew up. So I grew up in an apartment with my mom. My single mom raised me in an apartment. We were on Section 8, which is like the housing assistance program. And it was fine. I'm thankful for it. But it was like, you couldn't paint the walls whatever color you wanted. You had to have an annual inspection where they came and looked at your house and told you whether you had too many things or if it was dirty. It was always a very stressful process.
Right.
You couldn't have more than $2,000 in the bank. I mean, there's a bunch of different things with that. But so growing up in that type of a household and then seeing my grandmother who was in a mobile home park, and then they sold the mobile home park and then she had to move somewhere else at like 80 or 70 years old, I think she was at the time. And it's like, wow, okay. Seeing my grandfather who had a great landlord for so many years and was very reasonable, didn't raise the rent on them, but then he passed away and his family member was not as compassionate and didn't really care. Then my dad got displaced. And so like I grew up seeing so many people being displaced in my family that I was like, so all I really want is to live in a place that's mine, that I can lock the door, that I know will be there. Nobody can kick me out of it. That's all I wanted. Yeah.
I am so grateful that you have that and that you are, it's almost like the home ownership has also allowed you to become this person that helps other people get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like my whole life there was this weight on my shoulder, right? Like we don't have a place that's ours. There's all these things we have to do. And we'd gone to open houses. I have flyers from back in the 90s in the Bay Area.
Oh, wow.
Woo, those housing prices, you will cry if you see them. But they used to have waiting lists for like a certain number of houses that were built had to be low income. And so my mom would try to get on those lists and we never got one. But so we would do that. And then where were we going? Let's see. Oh, yeah. So once I finally got my house,
right,
there was this weight that I didn't even know was there, like was lifted off my shoulders. And I was like, wait, so like I can paint the walls whatever color I want. And I can plant trees in the ground and like they will grow very tall and giant instead of like a tiny little pot. It felt very freeing. And I didn't even know that was going to happen. But it did. And I was like, so basically anyone who, like, everyone should be able to, if they want, experience this feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think you talking about like the fruit that this could bear that you don't even anticipate, especially when you're kind of living your life and growing up in a system where you were vulnerable to being displaced all the time.
Yeah.
And you know, when you're that's kind of like almost hardwired into your system. And then, you know, maybe we don't like consciously see buying a house as a way to lift that weight off you, but when it happens and you feel it, that sounds like a really just a powerful experience, and also confirmation that this was the right path for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And after I bought my house, there were roadblocks. But because I had my house, I feel like I was able to get through them much easier. Like my mom at one point lost her house and she was able to come stay with me for a little while. Like because I had this space,
right,
I was able to get through these other obstacles. Wow. Whereas if I wouldn't have had that space, it might have been harder, right? Like I might have been maybe not able to like fully pay the rent 1 month, or like, because the landlord would have raised the rent,
right,
X amount of dollars, and then I probably wouldn't have been able to make it. And then this obstacle would have come up with family, and like, then I might have been displaced. Like a lot of people are just a very small amount away from living outside.
Yes, they are. And most Americans are just a few paychecks away from not being able to, right? You know, they're just a layoff away from not being able to make ends meet. I love that you brought up that home ownership for you was almost like you were able to create like almost like a protective factor, not just for you, but for your family, that you wouldn't have otherwise had if you were still at the mercy of a landlord, right? And I think that protective factor, you know, you used the word regenerative earlier. That sounds regenerative, right? Because, you know, something bad happened to your mom and she lost her house, but you could support her, so you can bring her, like, kind of, you can regenerate and she could have a chance to come back, right? To be supported. And so that, I think that supportive and protective factor is really important as well. And I've been thinking a lot about what wealth means. And I think as a financial person, I often think about it in terms of dollars, assets, net worth, like the hard numbers of what is your net worth, what is your wealth. I think you're also bringing up a part of wealth that we may not think about, or I need to think about more personally and maybe professionally, the fact that you could provide a protective support for a family member when they hit a rough patch, right? That feels like abundance to me.
Yeah. Or the fact that, like, if I needed to, I could take money out of that house now, right? There's like equity that I have. So if there was something I needed to do, I could also take that money out. And the community aspect of it, because when I bought my house, I was knocking on all my neighbors' doors and I was like, hi, I'm Rose. Welcome to the neighborhood. Here's cookies for you. And they were like, this sounds backwards. And I was like, it's fine. I just want to know all of my neighbors because I also wanted to like walk around the neighborhood. And then I wanted to know like, okay, well, if I'm walking around the neighborhood and I'm far away, I could be like, oh, I need to go to the bathroom. Let me go to that neighbor's house. Or like, or I need to go borrow a ladder. Which neighbor has it that I can ask? And so there's like a community aspect that can come into play too, that can also help in these rough patches. Being like, I'm not alone here. I have a house, I have neighbors. It's a little bit more stable.
It's almost like you're wealthy. You know, we think of wealthy as dollars and cents, but you're wealthy in community as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that, especially in all the service aspects that you're involved in your community. That's another type of wealth that is important.
Definitely.
Yeah. That's great. So we talked about a lot of really good things. And again, we talked about the paradigms and like what the homeowner looks like and how that can feed into our general assumptions about if it's within reach for me, right? I think for many years I operated on, well, this isn't the order of things yet. I have to do all these things first and then get the house. And then, we have the paradigm of the hetero couple buying the house, right? So I'd love to ask you this question. What advice would you give to someone, especially a woman, or maybe someone in our non-binary community that you or a person of color, you don't fit the model and you're thinking it's out of reach? What type of advice would you give them?
Okay, I would say to just look at your numbers and start investigating what it would take to buy a house. Because a lot of people come to me and they're like, Rose, I need to save up 20% and I'm not there yet. And I'm like, guess what? No, you don't. Like, you don't need 20%. Like, maybe you're ready right now and you don't know it. So that could be best case scenario. Like, you're already ready and you just don't know it. So we look at your job, we look at your funds, and we look at your credit score. And guess what? You can qualify for a mortgage that's the same as your rent now. Perfect. Or you're not quite ready yet. But by knowing this, we can put together a plan. We can work on your credit score and improving your credit score. We can create a plan for you to save up a down payment, and you'll have a pathway. But I think a lot of, I know, because my clients tell me, it's so scary to even take that first step.
Yes.
Because the fear that you will not be able to do it. And I was the same way. I was like, it's not possible. But remember, this was my only goal in life. So I was like, I don't care. I'm asking everybody. It's going to happen somehow. But that first step, they say, is the hardest one. Even just hopping on a Zoom call, because that's the first step usually with my clients is we'll hop on a Zoom call and just start talking. And they'll be like, it was so hard for me to schedule that call. And I'm like, yeah, but that was the hardest step. And now that's over. And just like a lot of things, we don't talk about them enough. We don't talk about money enough. We don't talk about, there's a lot of things. And so it's just like, take the first step. And I have a lot of clients that come to me too, and they're like, they don't tell anyone. I was that person. I didn't tell anyone. When I was buying a house, nobody knew. Not my mom. Nobody knew, because I was so afraid that it wasn't going to happen. I didn't want to jinx it. I didn't want them to like try to tug me out of it. So nobody knew. Thankfully, I found a good realtor who took care of me. But like, I have clients like that too. They're like, Rose, we're not going to tell anybody, but I'm talking to you. And I'm like, okay, your secret's safe with me. But like, so yeah, I would say just take the very first step.
The very first step. And it's funny because I think the same thing for me. Like, I think I talked to you and I wasn't really like telling people. And then there's also this thing that women carry around, like, oh, you shouldn't really brag about doing big things and so on. And so at least
Yeah.
that was operating for me. Right. But you talk about taking first steps, and those first steps are for all the big things we want to do in life, those first steps seem to be the hardest. So just to summarize what the first step really is, it sounds like it's talking to a professional
Yes.
about what it would take and identifying what you have and seeing if that meets the criteria for what it takes.
Yes.
And it very well may. So that's your starting point. You have like a floor, like, okay, this is what I can do now. If I want to get somewhere else, this is what I need to do to get somewhere else. Or I'm not quite there yet, but this is what I need to do to get there.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's professionals to help you do this. So if someone wants to work with you, Rose, I mean, I know that your real estate practice is in Sacramento. And so, I mean, can you help someone outside of Sacramento?
So I am licensed throughout the state of California. So I
Okay.
can.
Mm-hmm.
I usually will partner with other agents if it's like more than 100 miles away, just because I want to make sure that the person is knowledgeable about the area and that you're getting, the neighborhood you're going to move to, all of that, those details that not everybody knows. So in specifically buying the house, I'm local to Sacramento, Davis, Woodland, kind of, the greater Sacramento area. But I'm happy to hop on a call with anybody and just be like, here's the info like that I know. And I have a course actually about the home buying process, and it's little short videos.
Right.
And that's really for anybody to watch, because it kind of talks about mindset of even imagining, envisioning that you can buy a house.
Yes.
The process, which the process can change a little by state. Some states involve lawyers and real estate agents. Some states don't. So it can change a little bit. But again, just like trying to absorb as much information as you can without feeling overwhelmed. It's hard to do because real estate is overwhelming, but
it is.
Take it slow. Take it slow. And yeah, for me, it's just about trying to help wherever the person is. So like I'm happy to hop on a call, try to connect them with somebody else in a different part of the country, or, they can watch these videos, whatever will help the person take the first step. I'm happy to help them take that first step.
First steps, because that's the hardest, and that's what can open the door for all the rest of the steps.
Yeah. And I know how exciting it is when people get the keys. And so like, if you can take that first step, then you are closer to getting your keys. And that is like so exciting for me.
So just to summarize, you are licensed to practice real estate in the state of California. You can primarily give folks the most attention in the Sacramento area. And you are happy, and I think you're already doing this. You're talking to people all around the country.
Yeah.
People are taking your courses and your webinars. And in those conversations, people can reach out to you and schedule a call with you and work this out. People can reach out to you and take your course. They can do one of your live webinars. And what you're going to do is really demystify the process.
Yes, exactly. Right. My course, my self-paced course is called Yes, You Can Become a Homeowner.
I love it. Great title.
Yeah.
That's great. And then how can people find it? How can people find you?
Okay. So my website is movewithrose.com.
Okay.
And I'm also very active on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is @communityrose.
Excellent. And I will make sure that they all go in the show notes so everybody has a reference point, so you can access Rose's courses, her webinars, or maybe reach out to Rose formally for a meeting over Zoom. That is fantastic. Well, Rose, I I talk a lot about financial autonomy for women, and I have to let you know that I think for me personally, as a financial coach, as a woman, and as someone who has taken the leap into this home ownership space to build wealth, and you have supported your effort, and your welcoming me and helping me feel comfortable in the process has really supported and done benefit for my financial autonomy. So I want to thank you for that. And I talk a lot about financial autonomy. It's kind of my jam when I'm working with women, because I want women to be the captains of their ship. So I know what financial autonomy for women means to me. I'm wondering, what does it mean to you?
I think for me, financial autonomy is having control over your life and living the life you want to live. So in my world, being financially autonomous,
Mm-hmm.
is that how we say that?
Yeah, that is how you say it.
Would mean, and my goal would be like, what does that look like if I don't even own the bank any money? Like, what if I pay off my whole mortgage? Although some debt is good debt, but still, I'm like, can I just own my house and not have the bank own my house? That'd be great.
Yeah.
And having the freedom to do what I want, really, and the freedom also to invest in what I want to invest in. I mean, part of what I do as a real estate agent is every time a home closes, I donate $300 to a nonprofit in the community. That in the past, that has been the Sacramento Community Land Trust. It's been Loaves and Fishes. It's been places that are really trying to help with housing in the community. And so, yeah, financial autonomy. It's like, I have finances. Let me give them over here to these people who are doing great work. And it's going to help me, because the community gets better. They get better, right? Like, it all comes back around, I think. So financial autonomy, yeah, freedom, even more of that weight off of my shoulders. And also, I'll say, I kind of mentioned it before, but being able to invest in small businesses, other women,
Right.
being very clear and having the funds to say, yeah, I want to invest in this woman over here. I had a brand photo shoot last week. I've never done that before. And I had a woman as my photographer, my makeup artist. A bunch of the things that I got in preparation were from Etsy, women-owned Etsy shops and local Sacramento run shops. Display California was one of them, and Strapping was another one. Places I love to support. So yeah, I think all of those things are financial autonomy to me.
That you again raised like these regenerative points. Not, when you make money as a seller's agent, right? Or as a buyer's agent, I remember you gave me the card that you said a $300 gift has been given to the Sacramento Community Land Trust. And so you've received money, and then you gave it back out into the world to be regenerating the community. That's regenerative. And then also by hiring women and creating an economic impact for those women, so they can go out and support the community as well. I love how I am thinking of the 7 ways that we engage with money: earning, spending, saving, investing, borrowing, giving, and manifesting. I think we talked about all
of them
in some way, shape, or form, right? Because, and we talked about, and I also we talked about those 7 ways that we engage with money. And I love that you brought in, Rose, that, I'm the type of person and the type of financial coach. I get so I can, I kind of go back to dollars and cents, but I think you invited in to the conversation. Let's talk about what it feels like to feel wealthy in our souls, right? In our community, and to be able to regenerate and create a larger impact.
Yeah. And because for me, it's not like, you can't always put a dollar value on these things.
Exactly.
Like what dollar value do I get from going outside and knowing all my neighbors?
Right. Yeah.
Or what dollar value, or on the opposite side, what dollar value do I get if I go outside and there's a bunch of neighbors that have to live outside? Like that's like a
Right.
negative dollar value, but like
Right.
people don't always put a dollar value on those things, but I think that they have a very big impact on how we feel in our communities and how our lives feel. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How we feel and the quality of life that
Yeah.
we have. Well, Rose Cabral, this has been such a fantastic conversation. I think we touched on so many excellent points, and you invited in some aspects to this conversation. I think are of such great value. So I really want to thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for all of the work you are doing. And it's just been so fun to see you now. You just bought a house about a year ago, a little over a year ago now. And just from my perspective, to see like the stability you have in that instance. And I'm you can tell me if this is wrong, but I feel like it's created this other open space for you to do other things like this.
Rose, that is completely accurate. And you know how you mentioned like buying the house, you didn't know that there was that weight. Now I didn't have that weight, right? But what happened when I bought the house, I remember when I put the offer in, like the 36 hours that the offer was being entertained and the counter offer and all that stuff, I felt a huge internal shift in me. And it was almost like my priorities got really rearranged in a really good way. And it's almost like I had been waiting so long for that shift to happen. Something inside me was like, oh, I'm dying for this shift to happen. And then it did. And then it did open a space for me to focus more on my business, more on having conversations like this, more on advocating for financial autonomy for women. So yes, that is accurate.
I love it.
Yay!
I'm so happy.
Yay. Well, that was a fantastic way to wrap up our conversation. So for everybody listening, again, please look at the show notes for information on how you can get in touch with Rose, and leave a comment on, your thoughts on the show, leave a review and follow us, because we have many more episodes coming. So thank you everybody at home. And as always with finances, be kind to yourself, seek support when you need it, and let me know how it goes. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.